everybody, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro-Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Justin, Disembodied Beard, John, and whoever else really, Trash-Rama's out there somewhere. At this point, I don't even know who to cred. It's changed so much. I don't know why sea monster noises came in, but, oh. Well, everybody's like off on different tangents. So hi everybody. We're gonna do a golem thing. I was like, chat is like totally not talking to me. They're just like, la, 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 la. You know how you do when it's Tuesday and you're trying to distract yourself because the week is stretching ahead of you. Hi everybody. No trash yet, huh? We're not trashy enough. We need to be trashier. Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, Anne is late to the party. I got it. I see how it is. That's nothing new. Ah, dear me. All right. Hello, Bronze Golem. We're going to dirty you up today, I think. We're going to see how dark we can go. Sweet, Iffy. I did say disembodied beard, John. Everybody said that John's beard was actually doing the typing. I find that eminently believable. So I have switched from disembodied hands to disembodied beard. It's official. It's actually bronze rise. It's very greenish. You can see the green up here. I warmed it up a little bit there. But we very much intend for it to be more bronze. Now, bronze looks a lot... It's not quite as yellow as gold. Gold is, if you look at gold, one, gold doesn't tarnish like this at all, and two, it's an extremely yellow metal. So that's how you can kind of tell the two apart. It can be hard to tell a really yellow brass from gold at a glance, though brass is colder, because both of those are quite yellow, but bronze does tend to be a little bit darker, a little bit greener. It tarnishes, which gold never does, and stuff like that. Yeah, but whenever you see, those are kind of your visual cues. If it looks kind of dark or dirty, chances are it's actually bronze, not gold. But yeah, if you're trying this on a model, definitely keep in mind that gold will never tarnish. Like, if it's been buried, like in Egypt, if it's been buried and dirt and dust have, it's been underneath stuff, then it may have, dirt, dust, something in the cracks. Or if it's a gold, with other metals involved in the construction, then maybe you'll see something. But in general, gold is impervious to corrosion, so... Bronze is closer to copper, although it's not, actually, I kind of have to argue maybe not. Because both bronze and brass are copper alloys. And the only thing that's different is the amounts of various metals in them. But it's not like ancient people went out and said, okay, if it's got this much copper in it, it's bronze. If it's got this much tin in it, it's brass. They just mixed whatever they had to hand and until they liked the look, which is why if you go to museums nowadays, you see a lot less bronze or brass and a lot more copper alloy. Like if you look at a museum card on a piece, instead of saying bronze necklace, it'll say copper alloy necklace. Just because they've realized that it was all across the board. There really it wasn't like anybody came to any, conclusion that this was this or that. And some people maybe liked mixing a little bit of X more into their brass, which brought it closer to bronze. So you've got all these, essentially you've got just copper alloys all over the board. So technically, yes, Valendar, but in ancient times, a lot of that got mixed up. Nowadays, that's absolutely true because, if it's modern bronze or modern brass, they have definite, and they have definite, this is how you make bronze. But back in, 400 AD, they didn't. Everybody just pretty much made what suited the purpose and the look they liked, right? I bet anything that jewelry makers were going for, oh, I like this color, let's use this, right? So, right, exactly. Right, they were less exact. Like, why would you? As long as it suited the purpose, and it fulfilled what you wanted it to do, as a smith in those ancient times, like, where you're just making it up as you go along, and you're just like, okay, this needs to do X, it needs to be this flexible, and it needs to, like, you know, do this. So let's add this much copper, right? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So today, bronze and brass have definite things, you know, where you can assign that, but in ancient times, not so. So if we're working off of, now we're working with the magical alloy here, so it may well be that a bronze golem bronze is a particular, you know, mixture of, you know, copper plus tin plus magical, you know, metal X, or, you know, ingredient X. So maybe there's, in fact, in spells, it given wizards, it probably does have an extreme precision to it, given that. So you can create that as part of your mythology if you want. Yes, gold didn't have an age because it's immortal. Except that it is a tool now, right? Because it's used in circuit boards, isn't it? And it's also used to coat space stuff because it protects against the harmful rays, the radiation, right? Am I right on that? So gold technically is now used in utilitarian functions, but not in ancient times. Am I correct on that? Oh, right. That's right. I remember that story. That's old. That's ancient fantasy. Truly ancient fantasy there. Classics. When you're talking about Fritz Lieber and Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. But I do remember the Honk monster. All right. Which is, weirdly, I wonder if he kind of based that on Ray Bradbury's story. Or if that essentially, if Ray Bradbury's story, like, which came first? I know Bradbury, like, pretty much claimed to have come to it, like, just out of his dreams, but yeah, circuit connectors, good. Cool. Right. Yeah, makes sense, Valandar. Yeah, so technically gold does have utility now. I'm mixing up my bronze just in case I need to touch up something. So our bronze, which I am custom mixing, is 3 drops of ancient bronze. Go figure. Plus 2 drops of new gold, because I actually want it a little fresher. A little more yellowy bronze. Oh, that one did not go in solution. Bradbury's story come first. That's what I was thinking. But I wasn't sure because Lieber was writing pretty early as well. And I'm a big Bradbury fan. But you know his story, right? Where the sea monster actually mistakes the sound of the foghorn for, you know, a call of its mate. And it's like the last sea monster. So it's super sad when it comes and it isn't actually another sea monster. It was a very sad, like, it was a super sad story when I was a kid. I was like, oh noes. Because I was always a super sensitive kid, especially when it came to animals. So my sympathies were firmly with the Nessie. Oh no, this is not my mixing brush. No! Sorry. Begone, foul Taclon! I'm having a day. I had one of those groggy wake-ups where you're just like, am I awake yet? So essentially what I wanted for my bronze starter is I did want that orangey tone that I had to my ancient bronze, but I wanted to warm it up just a little, but then I wanted to take it a little off. And so I added a drop of pearl white. I could take it even more so, but you can see how much the washes, if you're new, this is actually the color that the bronze golem was painted in the beginning. All of this bronze here. You can actually still see it on some of the, actually no, that is scorched metal. But our washes took it much greener, which is exactly the intention. And it's an example of when you have a yellow metal that you are working with it, you can make it slide colder or warmer by the color of the wash that you put on it. This has just the green, just the Ancient Oak wash on it. And this has Ancient Oak first, followed by, I think, a Russet Brown. We did Pine Green, actually. And Russet plus Brown Liner. There we go. This is why I keep notes. So that's actually Pine Green, and it's shifted the bronze very much toward a classical bronze. If you think about like classical bronze statues and the way that stuff weathers, it feels that way, right? But then you can hit it again with a different wash and slide it back, and it still, when you compare it to the original metal, it still has that greenish kind of feel to it, just not as extreme as this. If you are curious about working with true metallics and washes, you need to go back and watch this program when we did this one. And I don't remember, that was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. But I think it was 2 episodes before this one about Bronze Golem. Yeah, I'm like that too, Shadow Raven. I can't see it. I can't hear about it. I can't can't do it. That's right. We were playing with heat discoloration, and I was deciding I liked this on the inside. It was cool and subtle and pretty, and I decided I wanted to keep that. So yeah, this was a couple of shows ago as far as the Bronze Golem goes. I would say 2 to 3. But then we decided to do that kind of cool, highlighting with different colors. It's been a while. Seriously, the move and ReaperCon disrupted me so bad. Like, I've lost the thread on everything. All right, so let's get some of our washes out. Let's make a brand new wash too. And I have to figure out how I'm going to deal with this scorched metal that I put down. I probably do need to dull it down and bring aspects of it in line with this by putting some shading on it and then playing with it just a little touch to bring it up. I probably will still use the same bronze, but in this case, I'll be using it as a highlight for the scorched metal after I do a wash, instead of using it as a base coat and then knocking it down a lot. Yeah, Julia, that would just be like, sometimes it's just not. The titles are set at the beginning of the stream, and often I will diverge or go off and decide like at the last minute what topic I'm going to do. So sadly, it's my fault because I don't plan this. I go with what I feel like doing on the day and what I have an idea for. So Justin doesn't know what area we're going to work on before I start. And that's entirely because I just want to kind of work it and enjoy it instead of nailing myself down to today we will do a face, that kind of thing. So, yeah, you can blame me. It's my fault. That said, I mean, I don't know, but if you watch Julia, if you go to the end of the video and you watch like the last couple minutes, I try always to do a recap of what we worked on. So even if it's not in the notes of the show, which it could be, I'm not certain if Justin does that, but if you watch the last few minutes, at least I started doing this like a couple months ago, so it should definitely be in there and say, hey, today we worked with washes and metallics, and you should freaking watch this video because it's possibly the most useful thing you'll ever see on metallics from me. But, yes, so like that. Oh, so yeah, we're doing washes. Let's wash. Let's wash, everybody. Washing is good for you, especially at conventions. Yeah, you could blame Ron, but you really should blame the proper person, yours truly, on this one. And it is entirely because, when you stream every day, like, it can get to be a grind after a while. Like, it's good now because I've taken breaks recently because I had to move, which wasn't really a break, but ReaperCon was a cool break. And then we have our actual first vacation since COVID coming up in a couple weeks, and that will be a real break. But when I was slogging through during the pandemic, like with 6 months with no real break except for the weekends, it would get like to the point where I'm like, all right, I have to find something to like about what I'm working on because otherwise I'm tired, especially during COVID when it was just stressful, right? All right, am I doing a 1-to-1? Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I am. And then I'm going to switch that up, and I'm going to do more of a brown liner. And maybe we'll do some interesting stuff. Like, I'm thinking maybe a Death Knight black wash over the scorched metal. That'll cool it down a lot. Oh. It shouldn't matter, Julia, actually. I mean, okay, it'll matter if, like, one time I do freehand, but I don't finish all the freehand. But as far as the order to watch them in, it's entirely the date. Like, just look at the date of the show. So if you're looking at Lizette and all of her streams, really watching it start to finish is the way to go. You could even kind of check, since the stream starts with looking at the figure, you could even look on that just in the first few seconds and see what's been done on the figure and see, oh, she hasn't done the metallics here yet, you know, or she hasn't done the freehand here yet, so go to the next video. But in general, it's as far as order to watch anything, and it's always by date. Oh, I was at my table actually quite a bit, Twisted Omo. You must have had classes off. I try to always be at my table a bit, but I was teaching in the morning and then did lunch. So often I was at my table in the afternoon. So if you had classes, then you would miss me. So I actually, and then I was at my table more, like Sunday I try to always be at my table, but I was shopping in the morning. So yeah, it's like I did several hour chunks at my table, but it was like, you must have missed me. I did not do part of Lisette off screen. I don't do any part off screen unless a model is right at the end and I just want to finish up the base work off screen. You just add water. Yeah, estrogene, that happens because there's so much pigment and flake in there. Some of the scorched metal will do the same thing. It will thicken over time, especially if it is an old bottle, because air does, you know, penetrate through the plastic in a very slow osmosis. So you must, when you find it getting thick, just add a number of drops of water to it and shake it or stir it. If it's really thick, stir with a toothpick. And then, you know, stir it in, maybe add a little more water, stir it in, and then you should be able to shake it. You can also, if you have extra agitators, you can add an extra agitator. Do not use BBs. Do not. Try to use like glass beads or bits of sprue, which are mostly tin, which will corrode, but very slowly. Stuff like that. Yeah. Yeah, it should. I mean, unless they missed uploading an episode, you should. The dress was one of the first things we did, I think, Julia. But if you mean the dress freehand, that would be later. So when I paint, I tend to go in a pretty predictable order. This guy's different because he's huge, where I tend to paint in pieces. But usually the first thing is either going to be like the main color, like the dress, or the skin tone. I think we did the skin tone technically first on Lisette. And then I think we did the dress, and then I think we did the hair. And then I went back to the dress at various points. Yeah, there's Trash. We were just saying, Trash, earlier that we were not yet trashy enough. You have now solved that problem. Ooh, I made that paint puddle really big. I think I'm going to thin it down and then make it into a wash. But yeah, Julia, no matter what, like I said, or with videos that have happened over the last few months, you should definitely be able to go to the last 5 minutes of the video and get my recap. I will say what we covered today, what we talked about today is blah, 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 blah. It'll be after, usually, whenever, if I'm still actively teaching, look further. But there should be a recap at the end of every video. So if you look at the recap, it will tell you, hey, today we tackled the freehand on this Lisette, or hey, today we did the hair on this Lisette. And talked about burgers. Or whatever else random crap we're doing. What was that? Who would just use water? When would you thin with? Hold on, D-Sparrow. I'm going to go back up and get that, because chances are I can actually say something useful about that. 1 second. Okay. So normally Master Series, you only use water, just like they said there, just like Alba Vazen said. And the reason for that is that Master Series paint has flow improvers already added to it, just so you don't have to do the work. So for almost all applications, just use water. However, that said, if you're doing extremely fine freehand, micro detail, tiny eyeballs, things like that, where you might want a little extra surface tension break, it is absolutely cool to use a little extra flow improver then. And I do it myself. When I'm doing really, really fine freehand, I will do that. I used it a little bit yesterday when we were blocking in our tree on the back of Lisette. So when you're doing fine work like that, where you want the paint to come off your brush well, then that's when I would say you could use a little extra flow improver. But otherwise, it's always water for me. Yeah, I mean, okay, guys. Flow improver doesn't necessarily help with glazes and washes. It can. I've talked about this before. There are a couple of different purposes to flow improvers, and different brands will do different things better, generally. So flow improvers will either be really good at self-leveling, which is, it makes the paint kind of self-level, flow together, make a smooth base coat. And that can also help a little bit in keeping the paint in suspension, in which case, yes, it will help a wash. However, that type of flow improver is already added to Master Series. Or at least a flow improver that is very good at that has been added to Master Series already. And so, you shouldn't need it. Like, that's part of why our paint stays in solution so well. It's the resins that the paint is made of and the addition of flow improver. So that. And then the other thing that flow improvers do really well is they break surface tension. Usually a given flow improver will do one or the other better. They will both, in general, they'll act as both, but they'll definitely have kind of a area that they're better in general, I think, because the chemistry is just a little bit different to produce those two functions. And then, yes, if you're building a wash and you're going quite thin with it, you want to use brush-on sealer in place of some of the water to hold your paint together. Or matte medium, depending. If you're a reaperite and you've got brush-on sealer, use brush-on sealer. It's the same stuff. Right, and that's where the self-leveling thing comes in. And I don't know that that's true. I guess standard flow improver, yeah. When you're dealing with artist mediums, right, Valandar, that's true. Yeah, so, I mean, water that's why we add this stuff to the paint. Because back in the day, I used to have to add a freaking mix of components to make paint work better. And to me, as a painter, that seemed ridiculous. And I'm like, I wonder if you could just add this stuff straight up into paint when you make the batch. And the answer, it turns out, for some things, is yes. So we did that with Reaper. That's why Reaper Master Series has flow improver pre-added, and why you can only use water with it, and it's not a problem. I thought that's what Reaperites were like, I thought you guys called yourself Reaperites. I don't know. What do you call yourselves? All right, so let's actually do some painting here at some point. It would be kind of cool. I mean, I could talk all day, but then we wouldn't make much progress. And I need to get out my pine green. And I want to get out some Death Knight Black because I want to play with that. But I don't want to do too much Death Knight Black because this is supposed to be kind of a green, orange, purple color scheme. So we don't want to go Reaper Maniac was taken. So Death Knight Black is a blue-purple black that's a liner. So it's not going to have a very high coverage. When building washes, this is an asset if you want transparency and you want it to fall off the upper surfaces easier. The question is, where did I put my 9107? Oh, noes. Oh, noes, peoples. I might have to do these washes based entirely on water because I have apparently not rescued all of my primers and other things yet. How did I manage to do this? Like, seriously, Anne? What are you thinking? And I have no idea. It's probably in the box of random crap from my desk, and I just haven't rescued it all yet. Oh well. The good thing is, I do have some non-Reaper gloss sealer, so I'm just going to use that. One of them is more of a lighter liner. I forget, Rogue, I think, is a purple gray. That'd be really good for drow skin and stuff like that. And for silvers, if you're trying to give a silver a very interesting thing. Hey, Raptor, thanks. We're working on it. Most of it's just the sculpt at this point. I'm just like bringing out the details that are already there. It is an amazing design by Izzy, and it is an amazing sculpt. But now we're mixing up a bit of washes, so I had to reach for my... the way that I do metallic washes is based on the way that I was taught by Kirill Kanev, who is a very famous Russian painter who's fantastic, possibly the best in the world, my favorite painter. He, like I, mixes a bit of sealer into his washes for metallics. And because metallics you want to usually stay shiny, that sealer is a gloss sealer. Usually I use Reaper Gloss, but as I just mentioned, I've just moved, and I've not yet actually dug out my sealers. So I'm kind of flying blind here. But I do have, I did actually find, if you want a real thick gloss, guys, this stuff. The micro scale. It works the same way. I mean, gloss varnish is gloss varnish is gloss varnish, just some are more viscous than others. So I'm going to put a little bit of that gloss into this bit. I'm going to add a bit of my, I'm going to try to play with this first. A little bit of brown. What this does is, since the gloss varnish is transparent, it adds more transparency to the paint, but because it's not watery, it does not break the paint. It gives it less coverage and equal body. So it's a great way to build washes if you're afraid of thinning your wash too much and getting Kirill, K-I-R-I-L-L, Kanev, K-A-N-A-E-V. Also known as the yellow one from Cool Mini or Not. That was his call sign on there. But Kirill is amazing. You can go look him up on Facebook. He posts a lot of stuff if you do the Book of Faces. He also has an excellent book out there for mini painting. I think I want a little more. So you can kind of judge it by how much, this is how much coverage the wash is going to have. This color on the side of your well palette is going to show you how dark the wash, how much the wash is going to fall off the top surfaces. So right now it's still pretty dark. I like it a little bit more transparent. But that's how much it's going to color your whole paint job, is that color, that amount of color on the side of your palette. That's why I'm building a yellow one on Cool Mini or Not. Yeah, that's what I thought. Have fun, Mighty Lancer. Yeah, his book is really high value. My day is going okay, Green Oaks. How's yours? I had one of those wake-up mornings where it's just like, am I awake yet? But other than that, you know. All right. I have no idea where I put my sealers. Like, I really don't. They went somewhere. They went into the ether. But I now have a wash mix. So do you guys see how now you can see through a lot of this? Like, it's barely covering the side. And that's why mixing washes on a well palette can be really useful for you. Because however much this has been discolored, the side of the palette, is how much it's going to discolor everything you put it over. So having that knowledge is a good thing. Cool Mini or Not, they've gone away from miniatures. Like they went to board games. So I think people have switched over to sites like Putty and Paint. Which if you have not checked out Putty and Paint, it is, that's where David keeps a lot of his gallery. He doesn't do CMON. So Putty and Paint is a great place to check out all the newest sculpts, and because a lot of sculptors put their greens or their 3D prints up on there when they're working on something cool and awesome. Let's see. And then I want to add a little bit of metallic to my wash. Just a little. And that's how Kirill does it. Now, if you want to really goopify metal, then keep this thicker, right? It all depends. If you're trying to do like a wash over metal, where you definitely want some of these areas to still show lighter, then you want to do this. But if you want to really add like goo, like mucks and oil, built up oil and dirt and all that stuff, you got to keep it a bit thicker because you want it to actually cover more over the metal. Yeah, great old stuff on Cool Mini. Yeah, that's where most of Jennifer's old stuff is. That's true. So if you're a fan of Ms. Haley, then that's where you can find the stuff that she's done. So if I put this brown over here, it's going to darken it, but I still get my metallic sheen. Yeah, especially on Sunday, right? Yep. Yeah, my table was pretty stacked. Yeah, we do try to like be at our places at ReaperCon like as much as we possibly can. I will get pulled away a lot on Saturday, though, for the award ceremony stuff. I tried to be at the table for quite a while on Saturday, though. But when you also have classes, it can sometimes be hard to catch your artist of choice. All right, so I just want to darken down some things that are in the shadows. So that's why I remixed this wash, is so that I could darken down all the stuff that I really don't want to bring up again very much, but I still want a little bit of life down there. So essentially everything that's not like in the light directly, I want to darken down. And if I really want to muck it up, I can actually take some of this liner mix that doesn't have anything else in it, and I can bring it over here onto the top, and I can just mix a little bit of this into it. Then I have a much goopier wash, so if I want to like dab it on and make it thicker and darker, I can. So I always do like washes before highlighting with metallics. Definitely. Obviously, if you try to do it the other way, you're going to lose a lot of what you've done. Although if you do highlight and you don't like it or it's too bright, you certainly can do a post wash. Will the metallics stay on the highlights raised area? Yeah, it will. I mean, and because you're using, I mean, you can see it up here, right? You can still see that it's shiny. It depends, though, because green oaks, when you do this, the more layers you build up of your washes, the more it will totally shut out the metallics. Even with adding a little bit of metallic to the washes, I mean, it's the nature of regular pigments, because regular pigments are opaque. And if you build them up enough, you will lose the shiny and we'll have to re-add it. But a lot of times with doing really good shaded metallics, you want to do that anyway. You want to go back in. You want to re-highlight, right? You want to bring up some areas. So like if I want to come in and re-highlight parts of the helmet, like I expect that's something I'm going to do. And it's part of the process for me. But right now, I want a lot of drama. I want a lot of taking this stuff down a lot. And I want to make sure that my shadows are really dark so that when I go and put on fresh metallics for highlighting, it'll really show up. That's so funny, Green Oaks, because usually what I hear is, I don't do NMM. It's too intimidating. So that's funny that you feel the different feel differently about it than the majority of people. Because yeah, I mean, I just do NMM because one, I like the look and the control of it, but I like metallics on big things. Like I think that true metallics look great on big things, and so that's why I decided to do this guy. Even if I end up not finishing the whole model on stream, as I discussed kind of yesterday, there will come a point where I really can't show you guys much new on him. Like even if I do all the front, probably not going to get to the back, because it's just going to take a lot of streams to get there, and we'd probably be better served going to a different model where we talk about different things, because he's all bronze except for just some metal, some leather. Oh, my Knoll. Yeah, GNOLL. Oh, it was the 3D print booth you saw her in, and Jennifer joined to that one. This is the Patreon is White Werewolf Tavern, And there's a lot of printers on Etsy who print their stuff. So I don't remember which Etsy printer I got her from. It is definitely worth, I think, figuring out which Etsy printers have like your have like painters in mind. I did get a piece yesterday that I was a little bit disappointed in because it was not printed in as high a resolution as I would have liked. Just probably because they're using a slightly older printer, but I just made a note not to order from that vendor again, and I may send them feedback just to see, just so they know, you know, it might be useful to them, it might not. I am really annoyed that I do not have my sealer right now. Marika made it to Reaper. I'm not sure what that question is, Mac Attack. I had a good time at ReaperCon. I was glad I went. It was nice to be at a convention again and to see people. It was very trying teaching with a mask. I'm going to build a bluish. You can see the color of, this is the color of the Death Knight Black, by the way, liner. So you can see that it's very indigo. It's very blue, but it's not like a greenish blue like blue liner. It's more of a purpley blue. Very pretty. I'm going to try it over this scorched metal to see if I like it. I may not like it. We'll see. Yes, Marika made it to ReaperCon. It was awesome to see her. She was telling people about science. White Werewolf Studio, yes. Yeah, but the person I forget what they called themselves, but it was the 3D printing booth that had a copy of Noli. Yeah, I don't usually choose by price. I just choose by who has the thing I want. Because not everybody, has everything. But I am very happy with the order of the Tiefling Druid bust that I got. Like, super happy. Like, that thing is super high quality print. Oh my gosh. It's flawless. So I'm totally going to give that person a 5-star rating and buy from them again. Yeah, I bought a couple, I forget who's doing it, but like there's some sculpts out there right now of adventurers. Like there's a Dragonborn Warlock and there's the Tiefling Druid. So kind of unusual adventuring character sculpts I really like. So unfortunately my Dragonborn Warlock has a lot more cleanup that's needed for me to actually start him. So I was working on that last night. All right, so let's try this. I don't know if I kept it dark enough. If I need it darker, I can throw more of the Death Knight Black into it. I've made it quite thin here. It's thicker here, so I'm going to mess around with the washes. Yeah, Jen Haley was there, Trash. She was just working. She was working a local booth. She did not want to be involved with the competition or anything and stuff like that. Teaching stresses Jennifer out a lot because she's very much an introvert. And for years, she did it anyway. But now it's like she'd much rather go to the con to have fun. So she just enjoys coming because she still loves the hobby. She just like dealing with people constantly and having to teach it's just really a high pressure situation for her. So. Well, I'm sure Ulfin Death Squad that what they bring next year will be based on kind of what sold this year or didn't sell. Because they had actually the dragon that I've wanted, that I've had sitting in my cart for like ages. But how are you going to get that home without breaking it, right? Because 3D prints are a bit brittle and fragile, so I didn't feel like I could do that unless I shipped it from Reaper after I bought it. So I'm putting that blue-purple, and at least the purple does work with our chosen color scheme. Putting it pretty thick to darken down this scorched metal that I chose to do. And you can also apply washes just like you'd apply layering. So if I want to have darker metal up here, but I want this to stay clean, or if I want to darken down the areas where these metallics come in contact, where these overlap, so that I can get more contrast, just pretty much put it on like you're layering. Washes and layering have very much the same consistency. And I do this a lot with washes. Like, I personally do not usually like washes. I do like them on big surfaces of metallic where I'm trying to shift the color and make it look weathered. I think it works great there. But in many cases, I'm not a fan of washes, and I tend to just use them in targeted ways like this. I don't like having to clean up all the area if I put a wash on. To me, it just costs me time. There. All right. So a little bit of shading. Hey, Basement. Ah, Tia. That's all right. It doesn't matter if you ask, if it's been asked 100 times. Always ask. There is no question I will not answer. Well, okay, there probably are some, but there's no question about mini painting that I will not answer on the stream. This is my workhorse brush, Tia. This is kind of, if you type, like, I think we have an exclamation point tools or ans tools or something like that. But this is the brush that I pretty much used for all of my competition painting up until like 2 years ago. So number 1, size 1, Da Vinci Maestro. Da Vinci is the brand. Maestro is the line. Maestro is their highest quality sable hair. It's called Kolinsky hair when it's that high grade. And so it's printed directly on the barrel to let you know that there's Kolinsky sable brush. And the series is 10. A series depends on, tells you what the shape of the brush is. And so a series 10 is their regular round. There we go. Trashed it is. Exclamation point tools. Hey, Val, thanks for the resub. 14 months on a 14-month streak. Morning. So yeah, so this is a brush I use a lot, but about a couple of years ago at ReaperCon, I picked up more of the Raphael. This is a Raphael brush, also a size 1, but much larger. This shows you that different brands have definitely different ideas of what a size 1 is. That's why you should usually start by ordering around a size 0 for miniature painting and kind of get an idea of how those brushes run as far as size for each brand. So I also use the Raphael. It is much bigger and holds more paint, but it still has that same razor tip, as you can see. And this is a different series. This is the 8408. And that means it's a pointed round. So that means there's a lot of taper toward the end of this brush. You can kind of see it there, how it tapers down to a really fine line instead of just tapering down gradually. So Raphael also has an 8404 line. That's a much more, I have a big fat one from there. I'll show you the shape. So a standard round from Raphael, it still comes to a wonderful point, but it doesn't have this extreme taper. So this is the difference when you're looking at brushes, thinking about buying. If you see a pointed round versus a regular or full belly round, this is the difference in the shape. A regular round is still going to have a great tip. It's just going to narrow down a lot faster toward the tip instead of narrow down toward the end of the tip instead of narrowing down along the way. I just kind of take care of my brushes, I guess, Basement. I rinse a lot. I rinse and reload my brushes an awful lot during the course of painting. I otherwise do not take great care of my brushes. I don't, usually put conditioner in them. I usually don't, I repoint them at the end of every session, and I leave them sitting nicely where they're not going to get smooshed. But otherwise, I think that the one thing I do that makes my brushes last for so long is that I rinse frequently. So the paint never really gets globbed in. It doesn't get down to the ferrule where it can stick and make frayed ends. A frayed tip is usually, if your tip is kind of splitting, it's actually a sign of a problem down here, not up here. Yeah. Cool, Tia. Glad to help. I like talking about the whys and wherefores of brushes. I think I'm going to use my actual bronze color to highlight some of this area that I just did, the Death Knight Black. I want to see kind of how it looks to use this color as a highlight here. Just water. I don't overthink it. Like, I've got my little, like, Hello Princess Unikitty paint cup. I usually fill it with warm water, but it's either warm or room temperature when I get around to using it. I feel that like warm water, you know, maybe cleans a little bit better, but I mean, honestly, most of the time my paint water's been sitting a while before I sit down to use it, so it's probably more like room temp. Yeah, I don't use like a specialized container for brush rinsing. I don't find that it's necessary. I think that a lot of the art products that are sold to us as painters are overthinking it. They may be a cool gimmick and they may really help some people, but in general, I think good brush care habits like frequent rinsing go a lot farther, and good brush loading and unloading go a lot farther toward preserving your brushes. But I mean, I don't have problems with DaVinci splitting at the tip ever. That's why I'm so loyal to them, is that unlike with Winsor & Newton, where I have had a problem, and it is possible to get a badly constructed brush, I should say that, depending on when the brush starts to split. If it starts to split like within, you know, a couple weeks of you first using it, it's probably poor construction or construction error, I want to say. But if you've been using it for a while and it just tends to start splitting like, you know, 4 months in, it's probably care. Less than 3 months? It depends on how much painting you've been doing. But I mean, if it's a poorly constructed brush, you're going to notice it within a week or two. Like, if you're using it. And the key is not, does it split when paint is in it? The key is, if you get it wet, will it come back into form? And if it does, then you may be able to use conditioner to reshape it and train it back into shape. So I don't know. I'd have to look at it. It's possible that I've always just had really good luck with DaVinci's, but I mean, I've gone through a lot of them. And I don't have a problem. So I'm not sure. Everybody's experience is different, though. But yeah, I mean, I rinse. I use one brush full of paint and then I rinse. So it's like, I've just built this habit over the years of rinsing very frequently because I like my paint to be perfect when I put it on the model. So when it starts to dry or goop, I just rinse out my whole brush and reload. Whereas some people would just reload their brush. And there are times when I will just reload my brush instead of rinsing. And that is when I'm using super thin paint, because I know that it's not drying and gumming in the brush. I know I can get away with it. But when using metallics, which are really gummy, I definitely am going to rinse and reload a lot. Oh, I missed that. Rapster, thanks for the sub. Dang. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It proves to Ed and Dave, who are the owners of Reaper, the main owners of Reaper, that having this Twitch channel makes sense. That's a vote for a sub is for the show is a vote for the show, is what I always tell people. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, if it looks a little frayed, but you get it wet, it holds its tip, it's fine. Almost every brush. Like, this is a brand new, like you can see already, it's drying out. This is a big brush, this big number 3 Raphael. It's brand new. I've only used it once. This is not the sign of a bad brush. This brush is still great. If your brush poofs when dry, it's because hair just does that. And the only reason it didn't do it in the packaging when you got it at first is because they added gum to it to hold it together. So if I can re-wet this brush and squeeze it out and it holds a great tip, my brush is fine. Like, if I get it wet and it's here and it starts splitting right away, that's a problem. That means there's some force acting on the brush to push the hairs apart instead of hold them together. And usually that sort of force is going to be due to something down here. So if it's a brand new brush, a couple weeks old, then it's probably construction. But if you've been using it for, 3-4 months and it starts doing this and it didn't do it at first, then it's probably something has crept in there and something has happened. Yeah, all brushes do when dry. All of them. Everybody. My best brushes over here will still come apart when dry. Like, do I have... Yeah, this one's starting to dry out now. And you can see how it's starting starting to come apart at the tip, but it's still a little damp, so it's still mostly holding together. But yeah, that's not cause for concern. Yeah, what matters is how the brush performs. If it's fraying and coming apart at the tip when you're painting with it, that's a sign something's wrong. Because that's when it should be at its happiest. Hey, thanks for the sub, operator. Hey, no problem. We're getting off topic a lot today. I was like thinking I was going to dive into metallics today, but instead we're like, it's education land with Anne. But I love these shows. Like, I seriously, ask more questions, because don't be afraid to get me off topic and, you know, heading in some different weird direction. Let me get my mixing brush. Mixing brush, you can tell. Even when mixing brush is wet, mixing brush will not come together. And that's because there's a ton of paint down at the ferrule. Now, obviously, this is an extreme example. And if I can kind of point mixing brush. I can kind of get it. But inevitably, it will split again very quickly if I apply pressure to it because of all this paint crusted in here. And that's why mixing brush is mixing brush. Like, I use it because it's an abuse to mix your paint with your brush. And so you don't want to subject your nice brushes to mixing your paint. You should use a crappy brush. Oh, New Code, thank you for the resub. Ooh, Prime. 22 months of remembering to re-up your Prime sub. I'm impressed. I can't do it. I always forget. This is metallic. You can see the shine. See it move? That's the sign. When you can see the shinies. Now the chest part is different because I wanted to make it look like kind of hot. So, or glowy. But it's a technique that kind of fails because the rest of the model has metallics, and the rest of the model is reacting when I move it, but not the glow effect. So the glow effect fails. I used that as an example earlier because I talk about this a lot, but I haven't actually shown you on a model that when you are using a faux effect, like a lighting effect or a heat effect, it's best to pair it with NMM, because then you've got two kind of, you're trying to trick the eye kind of effects. Whereas when you pair it with a real metallic, then you can't tell what it is anymore, because the real metallic is like, your fake effect just falls apart under the force of the real metallic. Yeah, the chest is like just essentially before I added the metallics, you could see that it was kind of a glowy effect. But once I added the metallics, it's just kind of an effect. It's no longer saying I'm hot, I'm glowing, because your eye sees the real metallics elsewhere and it's like, oh, I don't know what that is. But that's shiny. So it's hard to do this is emitting light, like false impression, when you've got a real impression of reflected light next to it. Like, it doesn't work. Does not work at all. So if you want to create a convincing heat effect or magical energy effect, with kind of like using, lights and darks and not using like metallics, then do not pair it with metallics. Pair it with regular NMM, regular paints. I'm going to kind of highlight the bottom part of this. I want to kind of bring up these little details here with the highlight, which is my original bronze color, actually. Yeah, and that makes that stand out nicely. Kind of blended it in here. Metallics are very hard to get to blend. You can thin them down and use the right brush stroke, and you can get them kind of to layer. But you may need to, in order to keep your transition smooth, you may need to come back into that with the wash. Yeah, this guy will always kind of be flawed because of that, because I did the heat effect to show you guys, like, this doesn't work and why. So this guy probably won't get done, and he probably won't go to Reaper since he won't get done. I'll keep him around, though, and at some point in the future, if I do want to tackle kind of the subject of metallics, shaded metallics again, we could restart him at some point if I feel like it. He is a really cool sculpt, and I like him. But there is a lot of him, and it's all bronze. No, not at all, Tia. Like, you would need to paint it like we did with these guys. with this kind of heat discolored area. I would need to somehow do it with like these colors from the white out. And because heat, like, but heat doesn't shine like metallics, okay? Like, that's not the thing. That's not what heat does. So putting metal over this is not going to give me the heat or glow effect. It's just going to make it look like colored metal. Yeah, that's it. But I did this on purpose, remember? Like, to show you guys that it just doesn't work. Like, I want to save you from making this mistake. Because if you go back to the first shows where everything is just like walnut brown and I've done the glow effect is very convincing. But the minute you add metallic, it dies. So you want to use NMM. If you're going to be using any kind of fake lighting effect, you can get away with like doing like a directed lighting effect. You can get away with that. So like, you know, making your light come from one direction. Like David did that recently with metallics and it worked on one of his busts that got gold at ReaperCon. But when you're trying to do really a fake effect, right? Like where it's just like you're trying to make a flat part of the model glow, or you're trying to put NMM next to real metallics, which I get that question all the time. Can I do both? The answer is no, because you can, but your NMM won't look like metal anymore. It'll look like colored ceramic or something weird. It won't be convincing. Like it'll just be weird and stylistic. Because you've got two worlds here. The world where light moves and where your highlights and reflections move, and the world where they don't. And so putting those worlds next to each other doesn't really work. Maybe, Julia. Maybe. I don't know. Haven't tried it. Maybe? But again, you'd have to have quite a bit of distance, I think. I think you probably could. Like if you had shaded metallics up top and you were really strong with your highlighting, right? Because you can definitely take shaded metallics and make them really heavily shaded and highlighted. And then like down here by the feet, you had a glow coming up and just hitting the lower part of the model. Yeah, you probably could do that. You probably could. It would be a lot harder though. Like it'd be a lot easier just to do NMM. And it would look better. You wouldn't be fighting it. Because remember, your eye is a better judge of this stuff than anything. And the one way to knock your eye out of seeing an illusion is to give it the reality. And so if it can see both in the frame, then it's going to be really hard for you to sell that illusion. So yeah, I mean, I did a couple models back when I was first starting to get better and I was painting for eBay, and I was using that to both bring in some extra income and to practice techniques. I did do a couple pieces where I did NMM and metallics on the same mini. Mostly because I was doing like a dark blue-gray metallic, so I had to use NMM for that because I didn't have any paints that could do that at that time. And then I would use like metallic gold. And yeah, it never quite worked. But at that time I didn't understand why. And now, after studying a lot more about how our eyes like see, you know, and how illusion works, right? How do you create the illusion? To create the illusion, you have to create a reality where that illusion looks real. And the minute you throw the actual reality in, you shatter the illusion. Well, if you're not comfortable to try NMM yet, then you probably also shouldn't necessarily be trying OSL. Or you should try both at once. It's the same thing. It's just a directed light source usually. Because OSL just chooses light like a glow effect, right? It's choosing a direction for light to come from and trying to create that illusion. And NMM directly depends on you knowing where the light is coming from. So, yeah, NMM can certainly get a lot more complicated than a glow effect. This was like 20 years ago, Space Toy, but it's actually how I got my start as like a professional miniature painter. It's very jumpy because, you know, sometimes the work goes well and you're selling a bunch and sometimes you're not, or you are running into a model that takes a lot longer than you thought and then it doesn't sell for as much as you needed it to. It was a good way to build a stable of buyers, people who were looking for people to do commission work for them. Would find me, and I made more money doing the commission aspect at that point than selling on eBay. But I enjoyed selling on eBay a lot more because it was just like instant like reinforcement that what you're doing is worthwhile because you painted this thing and now somebody's going to pay you money for it. So I really enjoyed eBay, but it was not a good enough way to make like a living. It was the first time I tried freelancing. Now I do my Patreon, which is patreon.com/paintingbig. And my Patreon essentially enables me to live off my painting. Patreon plus doing this bit of work every morning for Reaper, plus doing commissions, plus doing Twitch, plus doing... When you freelance, it's income streams. Lots of income streams. That's how you do it. But yeah, it's far more doable now. Things like Patreon make it possible to be a actual freelance miniature painter. Yeah, exactly, Julia. Just in working on your highlights and shadows is going to give you the ability to imagine what NMM needs to look like. So just keep working on that. I think the best way to practice OSL is to use an object that's up against the rest of the model. So a glowing potion vial on a belt, or when a model has a sword across the body, that can work really well. So, or a gem on the chest, or glowing eyes can work really well, as long as they're not very recessed. But I think those are the best things to start OSL with. Secondarily, the best thing to start learning OSL with is the models that David uses in his class when he teaches OSL, which are these little Pathfinder goblins. You want and you could do this with a model holding a sword up as well, do a glowing sword, but you want the sword not to be out here. It needs to be up here, over the head or something. So you want a light that's above and a little bit off center, and that will enable you to create a lighting effect. So this is a Pathfinder goblin. It's metal. It's done by Reaper. But I actually painted this one in David's OSL class, and he likes it enough that he used it as an example in his class this year. Yeah, no problem. All right. Yeah, honestly, Shadow Raven, you need to make it to ReaperCon and take David's OSL class. Because David teaches OSL better than anybody I've ever known, because he has an excellent grasp of it, both on the scientific mental side and just on the gut instinct side. He's a natural with light, but he also has taught for a lot of his professional career, and I feel like he teaches it really well, and he brings up all the different things that you'd be thinking about. Like, I'm biased, he's my love, but... All right, I'm going to highlight a little bit there, see? I believe so, Grey Wolf. It's a little better in person, though, because you're painting along and you get direct feedback. Also, I think he used the Nagendra Matriarch for the class online, and then he went back to the Pathfinder Goblin this year. He feels it works a little bit better. So yes, you can learn from the Nagendra, but I think that doing it in person... Texas is not doable. Or Texas will try to kill you. I mean, it will. It's the end of summer, and it's Texas, so it's going to be 97 or 107. But, you know. I think Texas is worth it to get, to get to ReaperCon personally, but that's just me. Yeah, as a side gig space toy, I think that miniature painting is excellent. Like, mini painting is an excellent side gig, and a lot of people sell on Etsy now instead of eBay, so do your research. And this is true just in general. Like, do your research. Look at what's selling. Look at how much it's selling for. Look at the quality that things are selling for. Do your due diligence. That's what I did when I did it. And that gives you an idea, okay, so, paladins are selling well, or wizards are selling well, tieflings are selling well, space marine captains are selling well if they're ultramarine, whatever. Space wolves are in, or Eldar are in, and you kind of follow the trends if you want to get good sales, but also keep in mind that what you do is going to attract a certain clientele. So if you paint Games Workshop, then you're going to attract a Games Workshop clientele, and you're going to be likely to get commissions for Games Workshop stuff. Whereas if you do a lot of Reaper stuff and D&D stuff, the opposite is true. You will attract people who tend to be buying things for D&D campaigns, and if you get commissions, they're probably going to be for that kind of thing. Oh, a bit far from Alberta. Yes, this is true. Although, you know what? I guess 6-hour flight, right? I'm about to do like an 8-hour flight, like for our National Dog Show next month. And I'm not looking forward to that sucker. Because now that I'm on the West Coast, everything like that's Middle East USA is a lot rougher. A lot rougher to get to. Haha, trash. Well, it depends, right? If you paint something for a game that's really popular, though, you're never going to run out of commissions. And usually, and you should decide too, if you want to do commissions, or if you're only interested in painting for yourself. Like, kind of have that reply figured out in advance, Space Toy. Because if you are looking at, like, naturally selling painted stuff that you've already done is going to lead to people asking you, do you do commissions? What is your pricing? So if you are open to doing them, think about how much you'll charge. Don't underprice your work. Figure out how many hours it takes you to paint a mini. Figure out what money you want per hour rate and do it. Remember, you could be working on something for yourself and having more fun. So make it worth your while. But if you watch that, if you take care for yourself, if you don't overcommit, and if you have a job rate that, amount you want to make that you can hit that feels fair to you, then miniature painting can be a fantastic side gig. Fantastic. Well, but see, there you go, Tia. You just use ReaperCon as a stopping point, stop for 4 days, play with miniature painting, and then continue on to Mexico for another week. Just make it a 10-day vacation. Like, is that so hard? Yeah, I've been there, Space Toy. And I've seen all my friends go through the same thing that do miniature painting for money. But yeah, and have a simple website, where you can post your work and also post like your pricing and, what you are, your policies are. Figure out if the model arrives if you're shipping the model, if it arrives damaged, are you going to fix it, and who pays for shipping? Stuff like that. Even doing it as a side gig, you need to figure out certain business aspects. You just don't need to worry quite as much about it as if you're doing it full time. But there are certain things you definitely do want to figure out. Just to save yourself headache, right? You don't want to get that question and then be agonizing about, like, what's the answer? You want to have thought about these questions beforehand. That way, even if you don't necessarily have a policy in place, when you get the question, you'll be like, oh yeah, I was thinking about this and I was, doing this. What should I do? All right, I'm going to highlight the edges here to bring this helmet out a bit more now. I didn't want to do glowing eyes on this model because they're recessed, very, very, very recessed. And so essentially the natural shadow is going to keep them from successfully creating a glowing effect. Doing a glow inside of a deeply recessed area, you're just setting yourself up for failure. I do want to put in a little bit of reflection of highlight here because I want to bring out some of these details, but it's going to be a very little because anything that's coming up here is probably going to be created by bounced light from the environment and not a direct light source. But I do want a little bit just to bring out some stuff. No, dog show. The dog show's in Indianapolis area, I think. There's no direct flights from here. It's all one stops, and so it turns into a full day of travel. Just kind of brutal. because I don't leave. I can't get up really, really early in the morning. Like my guts will not react well to it. So because of that medical consideration, that means that I'm taking later flights, so I'm getting in much later. It's just that kind of thing. Makes it more hard. And I've gotten so used to, you know, over the years, most of the time that I've lived has been in the like Midwest or in Texas, where it's very easy to get everywhere because you're central, right? So I've been spoiled. Now I'm on the West Coast, and it takes so long. It takes so long to get places. That's my boyfriend too, Tia. He likes to be in an urban area so that he can just walk places or bike places. He doesn't like to have to go far to get to stuff. So we compromised on this house, which is is not downtown, but it is close to all the stores that we would go to and to restaurants and stuff. So it's a good compromise location for us. So we were downtown. He lived downtown in the city we're in for a few years before I came along. But yeah, it is a lot quieter here, which I do like. So let's just get the edges here, because that's going to bring out the detail. I'm probably going to shade darker here too, so that these edges, bringing these edges up, will show up a little bit better. And because the head is turned down, I won't bring up this highlight to white metallic. I'm just going to bring it up probably to a middle bronze. But you can accentuate your highlights just by going darker in other areas. But yeah, I've heard that as far as selling miniatures, Etsy is where it's at these days. And actually, I've enjoyed my experiences with Etsy as far as purchasing things. Not that I haven't purchased painted miniatures. I've just purchased 3D prints. But in general, I've enjoyed my experience there more than I enjoyed my experience with eBay. So if I started selling random miniatures again, I would be more likely to do Etsy or give Etsy a try. All right, so essentially adding some of that purpley blue here into this hollow and just brushing it on, not doing a wash, just putting it, I know where I need it, so I'm just putting it there. I save time doing that. Time that I would have had to use to touch up this area if I put it over elsewhere. Yeah, the restaurants there, I really loved having like 6 sushi places within walking distance, Red Links, but on the other side, I do not need to be encouraged in my sushi habit, so it's probably safer for my budget that I no longer live in downtown Mountain View. Because we were 1 block from a place that did good poke bowl. Like, seriously. Like, Like, I would take my walk and I could just take a little detour and pick up sushi on my way home. It's just evil. And you know what? We still, like, if I get a bike, we could still bike down there. We're that close. All right, so essentially bringing in those dark, cold shadows to create some... Yeah, I want sushi too. I need to look around here and find out where the closest sushi place is to this place. Yeah, me too, Tia. I used to live next to my favorite sushi place in Denton when I lived in Texas near Reaper, and it was, like, so good. Yeah, my favorite sushi place. Bryce, I brought Bryce and a couple other people to my favorite sushi place while we were at ReaperCon, and the guy still remembered me and remembered what I used to order, including the exceptions, including you get this without fish eggs. Do you want that taken off now? And it's been a year and a half, guys. A year and a half. Like, that is like customer service. That's insane. That's why I love them. They're a little locally owned place, too. They were started by a UNT student and run by him and his family. He has other employees now, but when he first opened, it was just him and his family running the restaurant. That's too bad. Yeah. It's too bad that you're far away from good sushi now, Grey Wolf. I do love my sushi. On the other hand, that can make sushi like a really special treat, right? So when you're at a con in a city, you can have sushi and like go, oh my gosh, I love sushi. I love Pokedon, so I can't, like, going to Hawaii, it's gonna be like, oh yeah, it's on. Just give me a poke bowl every day for lunch and I'm good. There. So just a little bit of that cold shadow, I think I like it, so I'm putting it also up here. It's going to bring out all these details a lot more. When you don't want to bring your metallics up too much yet, remember, you can always go down. You can always shade down. I think I'm going to put some green in here too, because I don't want to lose my bronziness. Although bronze certainly can tarnish to kind of a blue-black, so I feel like I'm not too off with this. But I want the shadows in before I start putting like verdigris. We have a Szechuan place here that's just 5 minutes walk, just down the row, just down a block. And I love cumin lamb, but oh, you know what? I missed a mold line there. I'm gonna take it off, even though I've got the paint job on it already. But yeah, David really loves the Szechuan stuff. The tingly, numbing peppercorns like kind of make me. Oh, I was gonna take that off, but then I remembered my knife was in a totally different room. What are we at? We're almost at the end of the stream. I'm not going to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. I put my knife in my new hobby room because I was working on cleaning that Dragonborn Warlock bust last night. Yeah. Yeah, that's what the Pathfinder line, Space Toy. So it's the Goblin was created in line with Wayne Reynolds' artwork. He's a very good artist that does a lot of work for Pathfinder. Yeah, having a good sushi place close is not good for the budget. Agreed. Although the poke bowls were okay. Like, I could get a good poke bowl for like $14 with tax, and that was okay. Not too bad. Yeah, I'm going to add a little bit more of this dark to bring out some of these little pieces. So we're just pretty much like adding a lot of more shading. I'm slowly like bringing down areas to get more drama, to bring out more detail. And we haven't tackled up here yet with the brown wash, so I should do that. So I do like having that up there as an example of our first wash. So, you know, first wash, second wash, third wash. So maybe I'll hold off the helmet right now until I get the rest of this kind of figured out. But eventually it'll all be like this kind of color. Yeah, I just have one knife around, like, typically. Now I've got 2 rooms for hobbying, so I have like 2 different sets of tools, but I carried my knife over there last night and didn't think about needing it today. Let's take this kind of bluish and also put it down here in the cracks underneath. But yeah, so you can use regular paint washes to take your metallics darker and darker in the shadows, so that when you highlight them, the contrast will be very evident. And I think that people miss, like, they don't go dark enough sometimes. This happens with NMM too, where the shadows aren't dark enough for the shine to look convincing. Now, with actual metallics, of course, the shine is intrinsic. It's a property of the thing. But it's nice to have, see how dark this looks compared to that? So this, I just added an extra wash or two, an extra layer of dark. And it looks, you can still see that it has the shine. It has metallics, but I'm controlling the shadows a lot more than just putting a wash over everything and letting it go. So that's like the difference between really good shaded metallics and just like tossing a wash and going, right? The gaming metallics are going to be, you know, base coat, a wash, maybe a little bit of a highlight if you feel like it. But really good shaded metallics are going to like build up layers of shading. They're going to do it in a targeted way as if you're painting NMM. So you're going to add more of it in the shadows that are away from the light. You're going to try to control where your highest shine areas are. Because remember, with these washes, you know, even if I'm using a gloss sealer to build them, they still won't necessarily pick up the light as much because they've got opaque paint mixed into them. So there is some matting agent there to kind of counter the intrinsic glossiness of the metallic base and the gloss sealer. Just enough to make it a little more dull so that you can bring out more detail. And for true tarnish and verdigris, you always want those things to be matte. Because when you get that kind of corrosion, it's no longer shiny. Let's see here. What else? I want to grab this blue indigo and kind of outline some of these interesting areas in here. So I mostly want to use this Death Knight Black, this blue-purple liner, to accentuate details in the shadows where it would be a cooler color. So using it there makes a lot of sense. And then a little bit more brown over the top, because that's really in the shadow. We still want to see the outside edges of this flower shape here. So we are going to bring some edging color onto that now to bring out those tiny details. But it's not the main purpose, and mostly people are going to be looking at this outer area. They're not going to necessarily, this is a great detail, but they're not going to be looking at those little shapes. But I still want to use our bronze, and I want to bring in a little bit on the edges. Yeah, it is very draining because you really have to think about it to make it look good. Like with NMM, you've got to think about it. There comes a point where it's more instinctual. Oh no, too much. Too much paint in my brush. I made a blurf. Boop, boop. There. Fixed. But yeah, if you do enough NMM, at this point I feel like NMM is pretty effortless for me unless I'm doing something really complicated. I don't know if I'm doing anybody... No, right now I'm not doing anything really complicated on the NMM front. We might do... I don't know how much metal this guy has on him. This is one of our ones that's coming up. He's got a bit of metal, but it's small. So I don't know. I don't know when we'll next do a heavy NMM project. We'll have to think about it. I would never do this sucker in NMM, though. Oh. Okay, not unless I wanted to be, like, totally drained, as you say, Space Toy. No matter how good you are at NMM, like, well, it's why, actually, no, it's Templar. Templar is the model that I've been doing fancy NMM on. Hold on, let me grab her. She's still in here. I haven't moved her to the other room yet. So the most complicated NMM model that Anna's ever done is this one. And this, like, I have had to do it in piecemeal because it is too difficult. It's super, super difficult, and so I have to think every time I do a section. And so, like you say, it's draining, right? But it is a very complicated model. It's part of why I wanted to do Sky Earth on it, because it was complicated, because I wanted to challenge myself. But it's definitely a case where challenging yourself does mean it's more tiring, right? You have to think a lot more. So yeah, I totally understand the whole NMM drains me thing. That is something that I have experienced. Simple NMM stuff now I can do without thinking. Yeah, Sky Earth NMM. Where you're showing the environment in the reflections. All right, so just bringing out the edges there helps keep those details alive. Just using a little bit of metallic on the tip of my brush to hit those edges. And sometimes the tops of the plates here a little bit, depending on lighting. Again, I'm kind of thinking about NMM as I'm applying these highlights because I'm like, well, where would the light hit? Okay, that's kind of where I want more metallic. So now we can see those edges a lot nicer. Yeah, I'm on Insta. I'm bad about using it. Like, that's my one freelance, like, fail so far, Space Toy. I do have a lot of stuff up on there, though. Just over time, I've put a lot of stuff. I'm trying to get better at it. It's been rough for the last, like, year or so. I haven't done a lot, so I haven't put up a lot. But, yes, I am painting a lot more for, like, myself in competition now. So, now that I have a dedicated space for it. So, yes, expect more Instagramming from me. I think maybe an older blocked in, then I'll put up another Noli picture. But I have some stuff up there, yeah. My Soldier 76 and some of my GW commission stuff, and yeah. Things like that. The problem with me and Instagram is I always want to